And to the American people, I know that many of you have grown weary of this conflict. As you are well aware, I do not support the idea of endless war, and I have repeatedly argued against marching into open-ended military conflicts that do not serve our core security interests.
And we'll leave this live to take you live to the White House to hear from President Obama on Afghanistan.
Good morning. Last December, more than 13 years after our nation was attacked by al-Qaeda on 9/11, America's combat mission in Afghanistan came to a responsible end. That milestone was achieved thanks to the courage and the skill of our military, our intelligence, and civilian personnel. They served there with extraordinary skill and valor, and it's worth remembering especially the more than 2,200 American patriots who made the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan. I visited our troops in Afghanistan last year to thank them on behalf of a grateful nation. I told them they could take great pride in the progress that they helped achieve. They struck devastating blows against the al-Qaeda leadership in the tribal regions, delivered justice to Osama bin Laden, prevented terrorist attacks, and saved American lives. They pushed the Taliban back so the Afghan people could reclaim their communities, send their daughters to school, and improve their lives. Our troops trained Afghan forces so they could take the lead for their own security and protect Afghans as they voted in historic elections, leading to the first democratic transfer of power in their country's history. Today, American forces no longer patrol Afghan villages or valleys. Our troops are not engaged in major ground combat against the Taliban. Those missions now belong to Afghans, who are fully responsible for securing their country. But, as I've said before, while America's combat mission in Afghanistan may be over, our commitment to Afghanistan and its people endures. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not allow Afghanistan to be used as safe haven for terrorists to attack our nation again. Our forces therefore remain engaged in two narrow but critical missions: training Afghan forces and supporting counterterrorism operations against the remnants of al-Qaeda. Of course, compared to the 100,000 troops we once had in Afghanistan, today fewer than 10,000 remain in support of these very focused missions. I meet regularly with my national security team, including commanders in Afghanistan, to continually assess, honestly, the situation on the ground, to determine where our strategy is working and where we may need greater flexibility. I've insisted consistently that our strategy focus on the development of a sustainable Afghan capacity and self-sufficiency. And when we've needed additional forces to advance that goal, or we've needed to make adjustments in terms of our timetables, then we've made those adjustments. Today I want to update the American people on our efforts. Since taking the lead for security earlier this year, Afghan forces have continued to step up. This has been the first fighting season where Afghans have largely been on their own, and they are fighting for their country bravely and tenaciously. Afghan forces continue to hold most urban areas, and when the Taliban has made gains, as in Kunduz, Afghan forces, backed by coalition support, have been able to push them back. This has come at a very heavy price. This year alone, thousands of Afghan troops and police have lost their lives, as have many Afghan civilians. At the same time, Afghan forces are still not as strong as they need to be. They are developing critical capabilities: intelligence, logistics, aviation, command and control. And meanwhile, the Taliban has made gains, particularly in rural areas, and can still launch deadly attacks in cities, including Kabul. Much of this was predictable. We understood that as we transitioned, that the Taliban would try to exploit some of our movements out of particular areas, and that it would take time for Afghan security forces to strengthen. Pressure from Pakistan has resulted in more al-Qaeda coming into Afghanistan, and we've seen the emergence of an ISIL presence. The bottom line is, in key areas of the country, the security situation is still very fragile, and in some places, there's risk of deterioration. Fortunately, in President Ghani and Chief Executive Abdullah, there is a national unity government that supports a strong partnership with the United States. During their visit earlier this year, President Ghani and I agreed to continue our counterterrorism cooperation, and he has asked for continued support as Afghan forces grow stronger. Following consultations with my entire national security team, as well as our international partners and members of Congress, President Ghani and Chief Executive Abdullah, I'm therefore announcing the following steps, which I am convinced offer the best possibility for lasting progress in Afghanistan. First, I've decided to maintain our current posture of 9,800 troops in Afghanistan through most of next year, 2016. Their mission will not change. Our troops will continue to pursue those two narrow tasks that I outlined earlier, training Afghan forces and going after al-Qaeda. But maintaining our current posture through most of next year, rather than a more rapid drawdown, will allow us to sustain our efforts to train and assist Afghan forces as they grow stronger, not only during this fighting season, but into the next one. Second, I've decided that instead of going down to a normal embassy presence in Kabul by the end of 2016, we will maintain 5,500 troops at a small number of bases, including at Bagram, Jalalabad in the east, and Kandahar in the south. Again, the mission will not change. Our troops will focus on training Afghans and counterterrorism operations. But these bases will give us the presence and the reach our forces require to achieve their mission. In this sense, Afghanistan is a key piece of the network of counterterrorism partnerships that we need from South Asia to Africa to deal more broadly with terrorist threats quickly and prevent attacks against our homeland. Third, we will work with allies and partners to align the steps I'm announcing today with their own presence in Afghanistan after 2016. In Afghanistan, we are part of a 42-nation coalition, and our NATO allies and partners can continue to play an indispensable role in helping Afghanistan strengthen its security forces, including respect for human rights. And finally, because governance and development remain the foundation for stability and progress in Afghanistan, we will continue to support President Ghani and the National Unity Government as they pursue critical reforms. New provincial governors have been appointed, and President Ghani is working to combat corruption, strengthen institutions, and uphold rule of law. As I told President Ghani and Chief Executive Abdullah yesterday, efforts that deliver progress and justice for the Afghan people will continue to have the strong support of the United States. And we cannot separate the importance of governance with the issues of security. The more effective these reforms happen, the better off the security situation is going to be. We also discussed American support of an Afghan-led reconciliation process. By now it should be clear to the Taliban and all who oppose Afghanistan's progress, the only real way to achieve the full drawdown of U.S. and foreign troops from Afghanistan is through a lasting political settlement with the Afghan government. And likewise, sanctuaries for the Taliban and other terrorists must end. And next week I'll host Prime Minister Sharif of Pakistan, and I will continue to urge all parties in the region to press the Taliban to return to peace talks and to do their part in pursuit of the peace that Afghans deserve. In closing, I want to speak directly to those whose lives are most directly affected by the decisions I'm announcing today, to the Afghan people who have suffered so much. Americans' commitment to you and to a secure, stable, and unified Afghanistan, that remains firm. Our two nations have forged a strategic partnership for the long term, and as you defend and build your country, today is a reminder that the United States keeps our commitments. And to our men and women in uniform, I know this means that some of you will rotate back into Afghanistan. With the end of our combat mission, this is not like 2010 when nearly 500 Americans were killed and many more were injured. But still, Afghanistan remains dangerous. 25 brave Americans have given their lives there this year. I do not send you into harm's way lightly. It's the most solemn decision that I make. I know the wages of war and the wounded warriors I visit in the hospital and in the grief of Gold Star families. But as your Commander-in-Chief, I believe this mission is vital to our national security interests in preventing terrorist attacks against our citizens and our nation. And to the American people, I know that many of you have grown weary of this conflict. As you are well aware, I do not support the idea of endless war, and I have repeatedly argued against marching into open-ended military conflicts that do not serve our core security interests. Yet, given what's at stake in Afghanistan and the opportunity for a stable and committed ally that can partner with us in preventing the emergence of future threats, and the fact that we have an international coalition, I am firmly convinced that we should make this extra effort. In the Afghan government, we have a serious partner who wants our help, and the majority of the Afghan people share our goals. We have a bilateral security agreement to guide our cooperation. And every single day, Afghan forces are out there fighting and dying to protect their country. They're not looking for us to do it for them. I'm speaking of the Afghan Army cadet who grew up seeing bombings and attacks on innocent civilians, who said, "Because of this, I took the decision to join the Army to try and save innocent people's lives." Or the police officer training to defuse explosives. "I know it's dangerous work," he says, "but I've always had a dream of wearing the uniform of Afghanistan, serving my people and defending my country." Or the Afghan commando, a hardened veteran of many missions, who said, "If I start telling you the stories of my life, I might start crying." He serves, he said, because the faster we bring peace, the faster we can bring education, and the stronger our unity will grow. Only if these things happen will Afghanistan be able to stand up for itself. My fellow Americans, after so many years of war, Afghanistan will not be a perfect place. It's a poor country that will have to work hard on its development. There will continue to be contested areas. But Afghans like these are standing up for their country. If they were to fail, it would endanger the security of us all. And we've made an enormous investment in a stable Afghanistan. Afghans are making difficult but genuine progress. This modest but meaningful extension of our presence, while sticking to our current narrow missions, can make a real difference. It's the right thing to do. May God bless our troops and all who keep us safe, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
Mr. President, can you tell us how disappointing this decision is for you? Can you tell us how disappointing this decision is for you?
This decision is not disappointing. Continually, my goal has been to make sure that we give every opportunity for Afghanistan to succeed while we're still making sure that we're meeting our core missions. And as I've continually said, my approach is to assess the situation on the ground, figure out what's working, figure out what's not working, make adjustments where necessary. This isn't the first time those adjustments have been made. This won't probably be the last. What I'm encouraged by is the fact that we have a government that is serious about trying to deliver security and the prospects of a better life for the Afghan people. We have a clear majority of the Afghans who want to partner with us and the international community to achieve those goals. We have a bilateral security arrangement that ensures that our troops can operate in ways that protect them while still achieving their mission. And we've always known that we had to maintain a counterterrorism operation in that region in order to tamp down any reemergence of active al-Qaeda networks or other networks that might do us harm. So this is consistent with the overall vision that we've had. And frankly, we anticipated, as we were drawing down troops, that there would be times where we might need to slow things down or fill gaps in Afghan capacity. And this is a reflection of that. And it's a dangerous area. So part of what we're constantly trying to balance is making sure that Afghans are out there, they're doing what they need to do, but that we are giving them a chance to succeed, and that we're making sure that our force posture in the area for conducting those narrow missions that we need to conduct, we can do so relatively safely. There's still risks involved, but force protection, the ability of our embassies to operate effectively, those things all factor in. And so we've got to constantly review these approaches. The important thing I want to emphasize, though, is that the nature of the mission has not changed, and the cessation of our combat role has not changed. Now, the 25 military and civilians who were killed last year, that always weighs on my mind, and 25 deaths or 25 too many, particularly for the families of the fallen. But understand, relative to what was involved when we were in an active combat role and actively engaged in war in Afghanistan, was a very different scenario. So here you have a situation where we have clarity about what our mission is. We've got a partner who wants to work with us. We're going to continually make adjustments to ensure that we give the best possibilities for success. And I suspect that we will continue to evaluate this going forward, as will the next president. And as conditions improve, we'll be in a position to make further adjustments. But I'm absolutely confident this is the right thing to do, and I'm not disappointed, because my view has always been, how do we achieve our goals while minimizing the strain and exposure on our men and women in uniform, and make sure that we are constantly encouraging and sending a message to the Afghan people. This is their country and they've got to defend it. But we're going to be a steady partner for them. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
President Obama, flanked by the Vice President, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Joe Dunford, announcing what he called a, quote, modest but meaningful adjustment to U.S. policy and troop numbers in Afghanistan, saying they'll maintain nearly 10,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan through the end of 2016, through the end of his second term as president. Here on C-SPAN, we're going to open up our phone lines to get your thoughts on the policy news. 202-748-8921 is the number to call for Republicans. 202-748-8920 for Democrats, and all others 202-748-8922. You can also send us a tweet at C-SPAN. We'll try to get to some of those. Let you know, too, that Ashton Carter, the Defense Secretary, will hold a press briefing at the Pentagon this afternoon, 1:45 Eastern, probably lay out a bit more detail on those troop numbers, and that'll be live on cspan.org, 1:45 Eastern. A couple of comments from reporters covering the event. Jennifer Bendry covers the White House for Huffington Post, saying Obama keeping 9,800 U.S. troops in Afghanistan through most of next year, down to 5,500 U.S. troops in 2016. The White House's reporter Peter Baker from the New York Times, in keeping troops in Afghanistan, Obama emphasizes his reliance on President Ghani, who U.S. officials feel much better about than Karzai. Molly O'Toole from Defense One, quoting the president, at the same time, Afghan forces are still not as strong as they need to be. And here's the headline of her piece on Defense One. It says, America's longest war just got longer. Let's go to our first call here to Payson, Arizona, and this is Fallon on our Republican line. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm all for. I'm a combat vet of Vietnam. I am all for pulling the heck out of all of these wars and get back home, but stand flat-footed. That we will, if you do something that'll hurt the United States, we will declare war and bomb. So I don't want to see people come home and have to fight because they're 100% disabled and have to fight VA. Back our veterans, give them tax breaks on 100% disabled, and quit rewarding those people who ran to Canada during the Vietnam War.
Okay, getting a little noisy there. We'll go to Robert, who's in West Columbia, South Carolina. Robert, West Columbia, South Carolina, on the other's line. Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
My name is Robert, and I'm just calling to say that it seems to me like that he's suggesting a pinprick when we need a hammer. I don't understand. It just delays it. We should just go in and get rid of it and be done with it and come home, bring the troops home. All he's talking about is extending a war that's never going to end because we don't have enough troops there. We need to go in with a hammer and get rid of the people and come home.
Robert, what do you think that hammer is? That a massive influx of troops and armament, do you think?
More troops.
Yeah.
Suddenly, quickly, more troops. And get the job done because we can do it. We have the troops, we have the equipment, we just need the will to do it. And right now we have a president that doesn't have the will to do it.
Certainly one of those calling for more troops or maintenance of troops in Afghanistan is Vietnam War veteran and chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, John McCain, who issued a statement as the president announced the news this morning. Quote, "I am pleased that President Obama has decided to keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan. However, I am concerned that the number of troops will not be sufficient to perform the critical tasks being set for them." Let's go to John, who's in East Falmouth, Massachusetts. Independence line.
Yes, I agree with the previous caller. I think that when we engage these countries with the limited amount of troops that we're supplying, we can only do minor help to the region. Unless we fully engage the country and give the amount of troops that are needed to fully overcome the enemy, we will continue to be engaged for forever. And I believe that this president needs to either fully engage the enemy or not engage at all. And that's just the way I feel about it.
Okay, here's Earl, Arkansas, and it's Emma on our Democrats line. Morning. Emma, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. I really do think that the president is doing a pretty good job, but I just don't think that we should be sending our troops over and then our troops is not making it back home. That's my biggest concern. Other than that, I think that the president's pretty much, he's doing the best that he can, and I'm really, proud of what he's doing. I just, I know it's not enough troops that's over in Afghanistan, but at the same time, I feel like Afghanistan is really not a big threat to us. More so some of the other countries.
Okay, Emma, President Obama laying out the news today that he's planning to keep nearly 10,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan through the end of 2016, some 5,500 after that. The president saying their mission would continue to be training and going after al-Qaeda. A lot of the attention in the past couple of weeks focused on the area of Kunduz with the attacks by the Taliban there. Taking your calls and comments, your reaction also on Twitter at C-SPAN, and following what members of Congress have to say, too. Here is House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who just tweeted, "The president's announcement signals he doesn't want to repeat his mistakes in Iraq by withdrawing prematurely and leaving a vacuum open to mistakes." Giuliano in Dunedin, Florida, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Doing fine.
Good. Like you just said, Obama pulled out and left all our tanks and everything in those countries, and then ISIS had taken all our stuff, and on top of that, you know, he's been funding these other people to overthrow their government. You know, like, I don't understand that. How is that okay in the American people's eyes? Because if someone were to come over here and give our people guns to overthrow our government, that would be chaos. You know, and the American people just, you know, I don't understand how everybody's okay with this. And on top of that, you know, America's supposed to have the best military in the world, and it takes Russia 1 or 2 weeks to, you know, take these people out, and you know, Iraq 1 day to take the leader of ISIS out, and America's been claiming we've been doing it for months now. I think that, you know, this is all calculated, and I don't think that he has very much interest in helping those people overseas. I feel like he has ulterior motives, and I don't know. I'm a little nervous, to tell you the truth. I've never been on TV like this, but
That's okay. We appreciate you weighing in. Thanks for your comment. Let's go to Shasta Lake, California, and Frank on our Democrats line. Frank, make sure you mute your television or radio. Go ahead with your comment.
Okay. Yes, I think that we need to bolster up more troops over there in Afghanistan, because we definitely don't need those guys over there, you know, running around and trying to make their way over here. So we need to keep that. We need to keep that fight over there on their land. Let's take it to them, and let's send over more troops. And if we have 10,000 troops over there now, well then, hey, well, let's even send in some contractors as well, or contractors figured into that 10,000. But hey, let's bolster up those troops. Thank you very much.
Tweet here from foreign policy reporter for Bloomberg View and contributor to CNN, Josh Rogan, saying Obama on Afghanistan mission, quote, "This isn't the first time adjustment had to be made. This probably won't be the last." We showed you the comments also of the Senate Armed Services Committee Chair. Mac Thornberry, who chairs the Armed Services Committee in the House, also issued a statement. His statement saying, in part, given the troubling conditions on the ground in Afghanistan and the other security problems in the region, keeping 9,800 troops there through at least 2016 is necessary to our security interests. We'll go with a couple more minutes of your phone calls. We go to Mildred, who is in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Mildred. Now, I have been following the politics most of my life, and I'm 81 years old. At this standpoint, since I've had 6 members of my family, my immediate family, involved in the wars, Air Force and Army. My husband is now deceased. But I think our country need to withdraw from the Middle East because the governments there are not stable. They're not working 100% with our country. They're like backstabbers because they have no control over their masses of people. We need to do a complete withdrawal, prop up UN for peacekeeping, stabilize our own country, draw the borderlines, but please bring all of our troops out of those countries to force good government to take charge of their own countries. I believe we need to do a complete withdrawal out of the Middle East. Just support the allied countries in there for stabilizing through the UN.
Okay, here's St. Petersburg, Florida, and Tom on the Democrats line. Hi there. Tom in St. Petersburg, go ahead. Okay, guess we lost Tom. We'll go to Mike, Bradenton, Florida, Republican line.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm calling, first of all, to say that in Iraq, we should have never went in. The president couldn't have left any troops there unless he would allow the Iraqi government to try them in civilian court for any wrongdoing. They put in President Bush installed a bad president for Iraqis that didn't represent the entire Iraqi population. And secondly, in Afghanistan, it was a bad war in the beginning. We put in 140,000 troops of our own. Other nations put in another 60,000. We had 200,000 troops over there at one time, and we propped up the government the best we could. No country on earth has ever been successful in Afghanistan, and the it's a losing war. As soon as we leave, no matter how many troops we have there, the government's going to go back to the way it was before, a terrorist country. And that's what I want to say.
All right, here's James in East Moline, Illinois, Democrats line.
I'd just like to thank the troops and their families for all their service, sacrifice that they've done, and they will do for this country. I'd also like to have a question for the Pentagon and the President about what they feel China running a trade route through there and helping to stabilize as well as bring women's rights to the area, rebuilding some Buddhas, and seeing if that would be a viable option to help get our troops home by seeing them come in and place trade routes and help to rebuild. Thank you.
A couple of comments on Twitter. At C-SPAN is how you tweet. A Citizen Observatory here with, I really don't think a sustained presence there makes us safer in the long run. One more, the voice of reason tweeting, POTUS comes to a new stance for national defense and foreign affairs while claiming his position has not wavered, quote, absolutely not. And we'll get one more call here from James in Moscow, Idaho. Go ahead, James. Others line.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
I just would like to say that I think Mr. President has done the best he can. I think we have a limitation both financially and morally on how much we can alter another nation's influence in the world. Obviously, terrorism is going to happen regardless, but unless we do an endless peacekeeping mission in other countries and enforce our beliefs on them, which honestly would harbor more terrorism and more resentment towards the United States. I think he's done the best he can. I think he's influencing foreign policy the best he can too, and I appreciate the work he's done.
James, thanks for calling. Thanks for all your calls and your comments. Welcome to Facebook.com/C-SPAN as the conversation continues online.